Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Sarah Rimbey, a passionate linguist and high achiever focused on international political economy and economic development. She currently serves as the Director of Western Policy at Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. So welcome to the show, Sarah. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and more on what you're doing?
Hi, thanks, Matt, for having me. Yeah, so my name is Sarah, and I, like Matt said, am the Director of Western Policy for Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. I've been serving in this role now for about 8 months. Those felt like much longer, just given kind of the spread of what we've been doing and where we've been traveling. I've already, in the first 8 months, I've gained platinum status with WestJet, and we are on our way to premium elite with Bonvoy, so it's great. Prior to being at Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, I was at the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. And before that, I kind of went back and forth between the energy industry and kind of the political and government sector out in Ottawa.
Industry. What got you into what you're doing now? Like, I don't think many people as a 6-year-old go, "Oh, this is what I want to do when I'm older." So what got you into that path?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of, I would say it all sort of shaped while I was in university. I went to the University of Florida down in the States.
Oh, that's a
Um,
tough one to go to, hey?
oh yeah, really tough time, yeah, sitting by the pool is very difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but while I was down there, I started getting interested in politics. So I started dabbling a little bit down there with Republican politics. Found it wasn't my thing. Looks like you guys got it. I'll let you have this. But I actually applied to the conservative internship out in Ottawa. Did that for a year and kind of did a few internships between there and oil and gas. My family has a background in oil and gas, so kind of naturally you do what your parents do for a bit. So bounced back and forth between that. Upon graduation, I went to Husky and I was a crude analyst. So that's very spreadsheet heavy, very numbers heavy, which I am not. I'm a bit more of a chatter. So I think I may have annoyed a few of my teammates then, but got really good background experience in it. But that's when I really found that I'm glad that I got that hands-on oil and gas experience. But I want to pursue more of that kind of political and public affairs role. So it was really just going back and forth between the energy sector to get some real hands-on life experience because I didn't want to just be a lifelong staffer. Love the lifelong staffers. We need them. The people who are lifelong in politics, we do need them. But I found that I just wanted to do a little more practical experience in the sector that I grew up in. And then it all sort of culminated in the association life, first with CAP and now with CME.
Okay. Were you born and raised in Calgary?
Born and mostly raised. We moved around a little bit as a family. My dad had jobs over in the UK. It brought us down to the US, but majority here in Calgary.
Gotcha. And then, so you did your schooling down in Florida
Mhm.
and then came back home after that, or sorry, you went to Ottawa, you said.
Yeah. So upon graduation, you could apply for something called an OTP visa down in the States. I was actually just talking with a girlfriend about this during Stampede because she went to school down in the States as well, and we were just kind of remarking about US politics, and we both said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't go the OTP route." I think my dive into Canadian politics in particular really just made it apparent that while I had a great time down in the States, I wanted to be in Canada. You can't really do Canadian politics down in the US. So I moved, right back to Canada, and then started out, in Ottawa doing that kind of route.
Okay. When would that have been that you were working with the conservative government?
That would have been 2019
Or sorry, I should have
20.
said conservative party, not conservative government. Sorry.
Yeah. Soon you might be able to say that. Um, so that would have been 2019 until 2021, when my former boss, he lost his seat. So I headed back west.
Came back to Calgary and
Yeah.
and then kind of picked up on the opportunities here.
Yeah.
So So the policy side of CME, the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, is that around? There's some lobbying that goes on with that as well, or what does that look like in your role?
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of call it a little more advocacy. The reason being is because lobbying, that's sort of more for a specific company and their specific priorities. With Canadian manufacturers, we have a broad subset of manufacturers in there. We have people who manufacture here in Alberta, for example, pipe, steel products, but we also have, chocolate companies. We have, robotics companies. We have bike companies. So it's really a broad base. And of course, it's jurisdictional, so that'll be province to province, region to region, but it's really going to government with the priorities, the broad priorities of the manufacturing sector. So any labor issues that our manufacturers are facing, of course, red tape and barriers that they may face in the regulatory space, and just the cost of doing business. So it's kind of more of a broad range than specific issue per company.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense then.
Mm.
Um, when you're doing the advocacy, that would be, I assume, at the federal level, right? Because it's the Canadian entity
So
of it, or is there?
yeah, it's really all levels. I mean,
Okay.
municipally, from time to time, there are, if there's zoning issues or really just city taxes, we've seen that that's been a big issue. And I'm sure as an individual, city taxes are relatively unpleasant. So, engaging at the municipal level, provincial, working with the provincial government to come up with certain programs or, again, sort of that red tape reduction. But Canadian, that's going to be really the focus, especially heading up to the impending US election and whoever wins. Either way, we're going to see that, with one route, it'll be that 10% tariff. So really, really preparing for that and preparing Canadian manufacturers for um, what's about to come. I don't mean to say brace for impact, but just finding a way through that and working with the US rather than kind of fighting against our largest trade partner.
I see. So you're saying that there's going to be the tariffs that are coming in based on whatever happens in the election here. So just making sure that everybody understands what's coming up for us. Is that fair?
Yeah, what's coming up and also being proactive and engaging with representatives down in the United States. We have a lot of cross-border agreements with, for example, Ontario and Michigan, because it doesn't need to be just, US and Canada. It can be provincial to state jurisdiction as
Yeah.
well. So really just kind of getting ahead of that either way. I mean, with the current presidency down in the States, we are still seeing that sort of protectionism. And if we have a new government down the States, then we'll see kind of a ramped up of that. But there's no possibility for that to scale down anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Um, so you've gone kind of back between, the political side and then the oil and gas, which you said you kind of have some family roots in.
Mhm.
What do you enjoy more, like the politics side or the business side of oil and gas?
I would say that I appreciate the business side a lot more because at the end of the day, um, that's what keeps it going. I can go and speak to, this elected official and, this advocacy group, but at the end of the day, it's the people who are, I mean, really the operations level, it's the people who are on the ground, boots on the ground. They're, you know,
Mm.
actually doing the work. It's the people in the offices who are logistically getting product from, wellhead to market. So I'd say I appreciate that side of it. That being said, I enjoy the politics side of it more because I mean, we need oil and gas. That is just a fact of life here. I would not even say just in Canada, it's a fact of life on planet Earth. But unfortunately, a lot of those barriers that we face are, I would say, man made in the way of, again, that red tape, the regulatory burdens that we face. So, that side I do enjoy. There's obviously been a kind of messaging spun around oil and gas that we're dealing with right now, actually, with Bill C-59. That's the greenwashing bill here in Canada that's been proposed. And that would be another one of those sort of man made sort of barriers to getting product to market. So,
Mhm.
appreciate the business side of it more. Personally, enjoy the trickiness of the advocacy side.
Okay. What type of skills do you think have helped you most in your career and doing this work, whether it's on the business side or on the political side?
Mhm. I would say 100% of the time, I'd say networking. I when I worked at Plains Midstream, that was a pipeline
Mm.
company.
Yeah. Yeah.
My now friend, Brooklyn, she was an intern at the time, and she asked me a similar question. And of course, there's lots of hard skills to learn, and you will learn those on the job. To new graduates, I always say that, like, you will learn, your Excel spreadsheets, you will learn your, OMS systems. You'll learn all that on the job.
Yeah.
But it's really those soft skills to nurture, and your network of people. My dad told me when we were in high school, this is before we graduated, he said, never burn a bridge in Calgary, even in high school, because you never know who you're going to work with. And I used to roll my eyes and I was like, oh, you have no
Stupid parents,
idea.
right? Stupid
Yeah, you
parents.
have no idea what you're talking about. But honestly, just last week, actually, we did a manufacturing tour at a facility, and who was touring us around doing business development was this now man who I grew up with, and we went to elementary school together. So it's, I would say, networking, and every, I know some people would, gag at this, but really every opportunity is a networking opportunity. And it's about being genuine in it. It's
Mhm.
not just going and saying, oh, what can I get out of this person, or just bringing your talking points. I find in Calgary specifically, um, connecting to people face to face. I always say, if you have two resumes in a hiring process in Calgary, you have two resumes, you have Harvard, MIT grad, beautiful credentials, or you have somebody's stupid hockey buddy, but
Mhm.
he's a good guy. Whose resume are you going to go with? And of course, there's some barriers to that we do need to kind of sort out. But I think at the end of the day, networking, and just, you never know who you're going to meet and what they may bring to the table. So networking would be my number
Yeah.
one skill.
Yeah, you brought up a good point on the networking side, because I think a lot of times, well, especially when we're young, like, in university or whatnot, when you think of networking, it is about going and telling people who I am and telling people what I do. And maybe there needs to be a little bit of that because when you're young
Mm.
and nobody knows you, maybe you do need a little bit more of that. But I think it's also important to understand that networking probably is more about what you can do for them and who you can connect them to. Because if you can build that level of trust with them, that's where that
Mhm.
relationship is going to thrive. So it's not about me, it's about that person that I'm talking to, which intrinsically is going to influence me as well, or affect me positively as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think working on your personal story, people tend to say personal brand now. I don't love that, just because it sounds
Mhm.
a little, Instagram influencery, which people make
Yeah.
careers in that, and that's fantastic. But I think that personal story, there's two ways to say what you do. Like, you, for example, you say, oh, Matt, what do you do? Oh, I sit in a room with a microphone and I talk. Oh, okay. Or, you can say I'm connecting Albertans with stories, yada yada. So I think really sharing that personal brand, and really listening when people tell them your, personal story, and seeing where you can relate with that person to person.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Um, I want to ask your experience between the being the Republican, assisting on some of the Republican stuff versus the Conservative Party of Canada. And
Mhm.
I'll preface it by saying that I'm fairly, on this show at least, we're fairly agnostic with politics, though I am definitely a right leaning
Mhm.
individual. But I just want to get your sense of, like, what is the differences between the U.S. and Canadian politics? Because we from the outside looking in, it looks different. It looks
Oh
very
yeah.
different. So what does that look like?
Yeah, it's really different, and I'll kind of start that sort of like you saying, like, so I represent, of course, with Canadian manufacturers. We're a nonpartisan organization with Equal Voice, which bit of a side piece. I'm on the board of Equal Voice as the incoming chair, so that's to get more women involved in politics, and we're
Oh,
multi-partisan. So that's working with here in Alberta, the UCP, the NDP, and others federally, all parties represented. And I would say that that's really the biggest piece, the difference between American and Canadian politics. I find in Canada, there is still a place to be able to work, not even just in the nonpartisan space, but you're able to work in that multi-partisan space and find those kind of issues that unite us all. So with Equal Voice, for example, getting more women involved in politics. Every single party has women involved in politics, and it's something I think that we can all get behind. I found down in the States, and I'll say I truly dabbled. And it was just attending a few meetings and just going, this isn't really for me. It was a lot less based kind of in political ideology, and more just about who's yelling the loudest. Now, granted, down there I did find kind of my own way to be involved in the political sphere a little bit, with the um, it was called APAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee. And so that was one of those cool issues where, I mean, not cool issues, but a cool situation where you can have people from all over the political spectrum. But I found really, other than that, it was, especially on campus, it was just, is super, super divisive. I also find in Canada, I do like how we're a lot more grassroots. People think it's boring, or they think, oh, we should be spending more money. But really, that's when you're spending that amount of money, you have all your politicians more or less bought for, and that's my
Yeah.
opinion. But here in Canada, our contribution limits, I think we're at $2,100 per individual now. We don't have PACs. So it really is kind of back to that networking piece of face to face. If you want to get elected, you got to connect with voters face to face. You have to be at their doors. You can have all the fancy fundraisers you want, but you're not going to get the results that will lead you to success.
Yeah. Yeah. So outside of the tariffs that will kind of be determined with the U.S. election and whatnot, what are some of the other challenges that are facing the industry that CME is advocating for?
Yeah, so number one, really, that we've heard, and we just undertook actually in the first kind of 6 months of my placement at CME, a roundtable process that went around BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, met with dozens of manufacturers from all across industry. The number one issue that we heard was labor. So
Labor, labor,
it's
labor.
yeah, labor, exactly. And there are ongoing studies, not just with CME, but the Business Council of Alberta, the Chambers of Commerce, the business council. So it's everybody knows it's an issue, and it's not just in getting talent here. That's an issue. There are, of course, barriers to immigration
Yeah.
and sort of credential recognition. But here in Canada, it's something that has been, especially in the manufacturing area of kind of that more trades and hands-on career paths, it's been neglected for long enough where we're really starting to feel that pinch. You have now at a lot of manufacturing shops these, people who've been there for ages and ages, but they're starting to retire out, and you don't get that institutional quality anymore. It's also it starts in our high schools, really. The emphasis on, if you want a good life, you go to university. And of course, I can't sit here and say, oh, don't go to university. That was a good
Yeah.
path for me. But my partner, for example, it wasn't for him. He started in university, and he could have kind of muscled through it, but he ended up actually going to SAIT and doing instrumentation technology, more of a hands-on program, and he thrives in that. And it's just,
Yeah.
for me, I would not have, just as we spoke, me, spreadsheets, numbers, not me. Him sitting at a desk all day, not him. So I think really our education system needs to do a good job at identifying the different paths of success. It's not just going to university and getting a liberal arts degree. Success looks like many, many different things.
Yeah. Yeah. It is true though. Like, especially maybe 10 years ago and further back than that, it was certainly almost frowned upon to go into the trades and things like
Yeah.
that, right? It was like, well, that's kind of your last resort. Why would you want to be a plumber? Why would you want to be a carpenter? And I think we are now experiencing the back end of that, which is we don't have plumbers and carpenters. And guess
Mhm.
what? They're really good, high paying jobs that thrived during the pandemic. They thrived, like they're such quality jobs. And I think there is more of a shift back to pushing people into those sectors because we have to now, right?
Mhm.
We've got, I can't remember the stats. You probably know it better than me, but I think for every one person coming in to the trades, 4 people are leaving right
That's
now
correct.
through retirement and attrition and whatnot. Well, who's going to do this work? And as there's more of a shortage, they're earning more and more money doing that. So it's unfortunate that some of the policies and some of the rhetoric was to push people away from that and say that college and university is the only path,
Mhm.
or it's the only, I'll call it honorable path,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
not. That's not the case, and that's a frustrating thing that we now get to see the back end of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the number one thing that I've seen firsthand. It's not the back-breaking labor of the Disney cartoons where you go into a factory and stamp and whatever it is. It's it's very, very technological. And I laugh with my colleagues all the time when we're doing factory tours or manufacturing tours, and we walk around and you see these guys like very technical roles, and you just think like you are making I mean, especially when I started my job or my career, uh, the promise of these high paychecks in oil and gas. It wasn't, of course, it wasn't bad, but I see these young kids in these manufacturing facilities, and like, you are probably clearing double, maybe triple what I started making. So I think that emphasis does need to be put on the lifestyle too that can come from a career in manufacturing rather than just the day to day kind of grind of really any job, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you see the future of that Canadian manufacturing sector being, or the manufacturing and exporting sector? And I'm going to preface it with a little bit, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree on this. But I mean, the Canadian economy is not in good shape, and it's not
Mm.
heading in a better direction. I think it's heading in a worse direction, and I think all the economic indicators are telling us that. And I think we've got a housing sector that is essentially propping it up right now. And if you
Mm.
pull those numbers out, it's a little bit scary. So what do you see? And again, you can disagree with that if you'd like, but
Mm.
what do you see as the future of the Canadian manufacturing and export industries?
So I mean, I think the alarm bell has been rang. Um, Productivity in this country is just dismal compared to every single G7 country
Yeah,
in the world. We are just completely lagging. So I think as far as manufacturing goes, that's what we're really working on is increasing productivity. It's tough here in Canada because investment in capital, that's something that our manufacturers face as well. To tell a company that's already struggling with these labor constraints and the cost of doing business to say, okay, you need to invest now in a $4 million piece of
yeah,
technology to improve your processes. It's a hard sell. We do see some manufacturers who are having success and able to spend that money and seeing their gains. It's enormous. But you do have a lot of manufacturers, smaller manufacturers too, who they're really just kind of grinding out the life on the machinery that they have left, and that's what they're banking on. We're not investing in new technology. We work with one manufacturer out in Vancouver, and they have operations over in China as well. And he said, manufacturing in Canada, in some sectors, it's sticks and stones compared to what they're doing because we just don't have that capital investment. So I think it is going to be a lot of it's the kind of stuff that it tastes bad going down, but a lot of capital investment to improve processes and just staying up to date with that. The world is changing, AI, automation. And I was speaking yesterday with an educational counterpart that we have that we're working with about how important that's going to be in manufacturing is it's going to be automation, it's going to be AI, and we need to empower small manufacturers especially to be able to use these technologies.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and for the people that go, well, we shouldn't be taking jobs with robots and automation and this, it doesn't take jobs. It creates more opportunities. It creates higher paying jobs. The same arguments happened in the 1800s with farming, right? And look
Yeah,
what our system is now. I don't think
that's exactly it.
there will be people probably that get hurt by it, but there's going to be a lot of other people that benefit from it, and that's unfortunately just sometimes the cost benefit of doing these things at a macro level as well.
But and none of these processes I should mention too, like going to these manufacturing facilities, especially machine shops, that there isn't a robot that exists or ever will exist who can specialize to the degree that each individual company needs. So it's going to be, again, going back to that piece that manufacturing, it's not the backbreaking labor of the 1940s. It's going to be now working with those machines to get to fulfill those orders and specializing in that way. And let the robots do the heavy lifting while we are able to really focus on specialization through technology.
Yeah, definitely. What advice would you give to somebody, a young professional that's interested in kind of accelerating in their career path, or maybe going in a career path similar to yours?
I'd say kind of back to the networking piece, just get involved. I remember and if you'd told grade 10 Sarah this, I'd say, you don't know what you're talking about, but just get involved. I know when I was in high school, and I don't know if this is still the sentiments, I have aged out of that now, but it was not cool to try and not cool to get involved. And it wasn't really until, the time was ticking down on, okay, I'm going to enter the working world that it's like, okay, you need to get involved. And my biggest regret is that I didn't get involved sooner. So whether that's, if it's politics, go door knocking. But again, that's the really cool thing with Canadian politics is it's not this huge barrier to entry where you need to be a Yale graduate and your dad needs to make, $2 million a year. Just go to your local EDA, your local candidate, or your local representative. Go door knock with them. Go volunteer at a, whatever you're passionate about. I also volunteer for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It's a kind of cause that's near and dear to my heart. So find something that is near and dear to your heart. And again, just through all these opportunities, just speak to people, see what they do, because you never know when, a friend that you make in this kind of odd little corner of Calgary, you might call them and they go, oh, actually, they might be able to help me with, X, Y, Z. So I'd say just expand your network as much as possible. Get out of your friend group, get out of your community, and go further and see what else is out there.
Awesome. Well, if somebody wanted to learn a little bit more about you or connect with you, where would they be able to go for that?
Yeah, so you can go to my LinkedIn, which I believe is linked in the podcast at linkedin.com/Sarah-Rimbey. You can also reach out to me over my personal email, sarah.rimbey@aol.com. I'm still an AOL girl.
AOL.
I know, wow. I know. Yeah, see, I sit here talking, we need to increase our technological expertise, but I'm still using AOL.
That's awesome. Do you still have one of the discs that they mailed out back in the day in the 90s?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure anything that is outdated, I probably have.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast today, and certainly wish you the best of luck moving forward, and enjoyed our chat.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Sarah.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.